All right, I've likely gotten rejected. I did the math around 23,000 times in my life making cold calls as a freight broker over the years. And weirdly, that's the best thing probably that's ever happened to my business because I'd like to say at this point that I've cracked the code, which has catapulted my business past the seven-figure range, which I want you to do as well. Okay, I struggled in the beginning, found out pretty much everything what not to do, and now where I'm at now, which is great. Most of what I was taught about cold calling was absolutely wrong. Okay, I discovered that people don't choose you just because you have the lowest rates. Okay, I also found that asking like, hey, hey, is now a good time is basically begging to get hung up on. Okay, a lot of new people do that. I don't blame them, honestly. On the surface level, sounds like a great question, but we're going to go over that. I also learned that your mindset. I know it sounds boring, but we're going to get into it. It really is important. Your mindset when you pick up the phone is just as important as the words that are coming out of your mouth and how you say those words. Okay. All right. Let's go over about what doesn't work. Okay. There's a lot of bad cold calling advice out there, especially, I hate to call them out, but it feels right because I watched a lot of YouTube videos when I first started. A lot of the stuff that I learned was so wrong. It was it was like, is anything being taught on this platform right? Okay, so this is why I'm coming out with this video, so I can show you what not to do and what to do. Okay, so let me save you some time by debunking some of the worst offenders. All right, bad advice number one. It's all about offering the lowest rates. This one, it sounds logical, right? Like shippers care about costs, right? But if you compete solely on price, then you're basically racing to the bottom. And I tried being the cheapest guy in town, and I ended up with razor thin margins and clients who just completely ditched me the second someone else undercut my rate, because a lot of shippers work not just with you, but they work with likely a few other brokers as well to compare rates. And the lesson there is like, don't sell on price. You want to sell on value. So shippers care about, they care about on-time delivery. They care about reliability and communication, the things that actually keep their business running smoothly. And if you make it all about money and you only focus on doing work with shippers who care about the lowest cost rate, you'll likely be treated as a commodity instead of an actual partner. Number one, get rid of those shippers, okay? It's going to be like the hardest decision you make because you're so excited that you finally got your first shipper. But if you find they are only focused on price, you will, I guarantee you will eventually get rid of them down the road. You'll find that they are a total waste of time. Bad advice number two, always start with a yes or no question when you're on the phone. And you've heard this, like, hey, is now a good time? I'm sure you've said it, and I'm sure you've heard someone ask you before too. Or like, hey, did I catch you at a bad time? Newsflash, it's always a bad time when a stranger is cold calling, whether you're on the receiving end or not. And I get cold called all the time. And I try my best to listen before trying to hang up. But there's so many bad pitches out there. And 99% of people sound like robots out there, man. Like when I used to ask, like, is this now a good time? 9 times out of 10, more than that, 9.5 times out of 10, people responded with like, you know what? Actually, I'm actually in the middle of something. And then they would either hang up the phone right away before I could say anything else, or they would just like try to soft close me off the phone. Like, why give them an easy chance to shut you down? Okay. Instead, we're using a pattern interrupt. Okay. Say something that they aren't expecting. Like, for example, I often open with like, hey, my name is Matt. Do you think, or I don't even say, hey, my name is Matt yet, because likely if you're introducing yourself, they already know that they've never spoken to you before, so that they already are putting their guard up. So a lot of the times I just say, hey, do you think you might be able to help me with something transportation related by chance? And this way, they don't know who you are yet. They don't know that you're technically selling a service yet. So it allows a response and a dialogue to begin on a positive note, because they then step into the territory or wanting to help me after I ask that question, because they are the logistics manager, and of course that they know that they can help you with a transportation question. So now they want to help you before you even get into the rest of what you were going to say. So really the point is just to like break their autopilot response and just like get some kind of chuckle or curiosity. Never start a cold call with a salesy question like, do you have time? Because they immediately know that they'll have to spend then maybe several minutes of their valuable time on you, which they don't want to risk, which is why it's always a negative response. So that lets them slam the door in your face. So don't do it. Ignore that advice now. That door is now closed. We're in a better spot. Awesome. All right, bad advice number 3, just keep calling and emailing every day until they respond. Following up is good, okay? Persistence is good. Pestering, not so much, all right? Early on, I thought I was being tenacious by following up with a prospect 5 days in a row, okay? In reality, I started putting myself in their shoes. I probably just trained them to recognize and ignore my number, all right? Nobody likes feeling stalked. And I would actually get so excited about someone sending me a quote, I would literally just start calling them out of the blue like, hey, did I win that shipment? Or like, hey, got any more shipments for me to potentially help you out with? Oh, man. Yes, fortune is in the follow-up, but it's about quality and timing, okay? Not the sheer quantity, okay? Instead of bombarding them, we need to space out your follow-ups and always bring something new to the table, okay? Like maybe a useful market update that's specific to their niche, or like an update about capacity in their area, which they care a lot about. A friendly check-in about maybe their recent project that they could have told you on the phone at some point, or you found out about it online somewhere on their website. Show them that you're helpful and that you actually have value, and that you aren't desperate for freight, even though in the back of your mind, yeah, maybe you are. Sometimes the fastest way to lose one of these prospects is to annoy the shit out of them with too many follow-ups. All right, so let's get that out the door. On to new and better things. Okay. By the way, let's kill another myth: the idea that cold calling is dead. I hear people say no one picks up the phone anymore, which is very wrong. If that were true, I wouldn't be here telling you about the 23,000 calls that skyrocketed me past the 7-figure mark at this point, okay? Cold calling is very much still alive. It's bad cold calling that is very much dead, okay? The key is to not sound like every other salesperson reading a script. Now, before we even begin to get into the scripts and tactics, we need to get your mindset straight, okay? For starters, let's stop thinking of it as cold calling. Even though like it might sound as though you're bugging these people, but think of it as problem solving. And you're not just dialing random numbers hoping to beg for business. Like, you are a professional now and you're a business owner with a solution, and you're looking for someone who has a problem that you can fix. And you don't know who that is until you get a hold of that person, which you will eventually come by, because it's all a big numbers game. That's all sales is. This is one mental shift that changed everything for me, okay? When I started calling people with the mindset of like, whose day can I make easier? I suddenly sounded way more confident and way less desperate. And people can hear that confidence and genuine intent in your voice. Like, they really can. And let's address that big fear, which is very valid, which is rejection, okay? Getting told no several times a day is very tough mentally, okay? Early on, I took pretty much every hang up personally. I'd have to just peel myself off the frickin' floor because I had a morning of really bad calls. Here's the truth. They're not rejecting you, okay? they're rejecting an offer that didn't click in that moment in time because there simply wasn't a need, not that I sucked at my opener. All right. I learned that to treat each call like it was just a brand new game. Okay. Like, did you miss a shot? Just shake it off and make the next call. All right. In fact, like I started treating cold calls like basically going to the gym. Okay. Every no was just a rep that made me stronger and got me closer to a yes. Okay. It sounds cheesy, but it worked. All right. Also, drop the desperation. If you go into a call thinking, I really need this sale to pay my bills. Like I need freight to move right now. I need crazy margins. Okay. You will subconsciously project that anxiety onto other people. Prospects can smell desperation through the phone. It's like this weird sixth sense, and I'm sure you felt it before when you've been called by a sales rep as well. Instead, like, adopt an abundance mindset, okay? There's plenty of potential customers out there. There's thousands, tens of thousands of shippers, and just in the US alone, in fact. And this one call is not going to make or break you. When you truly believe that, you'll sound more relaxed and assertive. Ironically, the less you need any single deal, the more deals you will close. Trust me on that, okay? Here's a little story, all right? My friend Daniel, he's a freight broker that I mentored. He used to dread picking up the phone, okay? He was so nervous and focused so much on making a sale that he would rush through his pitch and just forget to listen. Like he was reading a script, which is fine, I think, when you first start out, honestly. But he would just race through it because he would get so excited that if they maybe gave him any inclination that they were interested, and not surprisingly, he struck out a lot, like 100% of the time. We worked on his mindset, and I told him to pause and like remind himself before each call, I have something valuable to offer. Like I'm just here to see if we're a good fit and to not beg. And that small mindset tweak, which isn't easy, it made Daniel sound way more like an advisor or like what I like to call a subject matter expert and less like a telemarketer reading a script. Okay. And guess what? Prospects started staying on the line a lot longer and actually talked with him. All right, let's keep Daniel in mind. I'll share how things turned out for him soon, but spoiler, a good mindset was a good first step in his turnaround. Lastly, use a bit of sales psychology on yourself. Before a call, stand up. Okay, that sounds stupid. Okay, it actually works. Before a call, just stand up, just like smile, get your energy right, and pretend as though you are talking to your best friend. And it might feel silly, but smiling while you talk on the phone, or even before you even pick up the phone, it really does make your voice warmer and more friendly. And I even had a sticky note by my desk, like to remind me to smile. All right, don't judge. It did work. And just remember, like the person on the other end is just another human being, okay? If you sound friendly and confident and genuinely curious about helping them, that is extremely disarming, okay? They will eventually, like their knees are going to stop shaking. They're going to sit back in their chair. They might recline the chair a little bit and actually just start chatting with you. All right, now that your mindset is a little bit more warmed up, let's get into like the tactical stuff, like the cold calling strategies and scripts that actually get results. So time for like the tactical side of things, like what actually works during a call. These are the strategies and like little tricks and stuff that turned those painful dial tones into genuine, like real conversations and deals for me. Okay, rule number 1. We got to do our homework, okay? There is some preparation involved. Don't go overboard. Few minutes max before you call anyone. Spend a couple minutes looking up the prospect themselves and the company, okay? You don't need like a full-blown essay, okay? Just like 1 or 2 little nuggets that are very specific to them. Maybe you saw a press release about them expanding a warehouse, or you know that they ship steel and you just You just moved a big steel load last week for someone else that's like right down the road, or even just someone that's in a very similar niche as them. Mentioning something specific to them in the first 10 seconds is a huge pattern interrupt. Remember when I said that? It shows you're not just another random name on a call list, okay? Even a line like, hey, I noticed you guys just launched a new product. Congrats on that. That can set you apart by itself. 2 minutes of research can make a night and day difference on how your call starts, and it's going to differentiate you from, I guarantee you, I promise you, 99.9% of the other calls that they get. So do that couple minutes of research. It's going to make your life so much easier. All right, so now if they've responded that they already have everything covered, acknowledge that, and then just pivot to keep the door open to future opportunities. So, for example, this is what I would say. Hey, makes a lot of sense. A lot of companies that I talk to have something very similar in place to you guys. Usually where we end up helping is when, like, let's say rates fluctuate in a very specific time of the year for your specific niche, or like when lanes shift like unexpectedly, or if you need like some kind of recovery driver, which is a great way to prove yourself using those little small lanes, and then hopefully for them to expand and give you a lot more volume down the road. So like, hey, what's the best way to like stay on your radar? And by structuring the conversation this way, you avoid sounding like every other broker and just hanging up, by the way. A lot of them just hang up, they just give up. And instead, you're just positioning yourself as a knowledgeable, strategic partner who can step in when needed. And a lot of them ignore that. So next, we want to make sure to ask open-ended questions and actually listen to what they said, okay? Okay, so after your opener and like a very quick value punch, engage them with a question. Something like, how are you handling X right now? Or like, what are your biggest challenges with Y? Tailor it to what you suspect their pain might be for their niche, okay? Capacity related, transit times related, damage claims, whatever. And then, like my first boss out of college told me, just shut the hell up and listen, man. It felt like that in my mind, all right? And this was one of like my hardest learned lessons. I used to just completely fire hose prospects with reasons to work with me, barely coming up for air. Wrong move, all right? The more the prospect talks, the better your chance of connecting, okay? Use the old mantra, 2 ears, 1 mouth, all right? Like, use them in that ratio too, okay? When they answer, like, actually listen to what they're saying. Like, encourage them with a short prompt, like, hey, I see. Like, or something similar to that. That sounded dumb, but you know what I mean. Like, let them know you're listening while they're talking, or like a relevant follow-up question when they stop. So not only will you learn exactly how to help them, but they'll feel heard and respected, which almost never happens on a cold call. So that's one of the biggest ways that you're going to differentiate yourself, okay? Now let's adapt and build rapport. By the way, every prospect is different, okay? So pay attention to their tone and pace. And if you hear them speaking quickly and getting to the point, like think like a New York minute, all right? Match that energy, okay? Be concise and direct. And if they sound more relaxed or even like chatty, like take a breath and maybe try to mirror that friendliness as much as possible. That's another psychological trick, like match their energy. And if they're super low energy and they are mute, don't be like that, okay? We want to actually get a conversation going. But it's subtle, but people tend to warm up to others who are like them. So just share a quick relatable comment if it's appropriate. If there's anything you found in your research that you might be able to just pop into the conversation that they'll know about. Don't be too stocky, like, hey, I know who you went on a date with for your high school prom. That's weird, all right? But if they mention something like, hey, I'm dealing with a lot this morning. There's a lot going on. I'm so stressed out. You might respond lightly, like, you know what? I hear you, man. It sounds like a Monday. And you can also honestly just be respectful and ask to call back like tomorrow, and they might take you up on it. but they also might just completely respect you for giving them time. Okay, tiny moments of understanding that builds rapport. Okay, just remember just keep it professional. Like, you're not trying to be their new best friend on a cold call, but you do want to be likable and respectful, and that's what you'll learn over the course of hundreds, if not thousands of calls. It comes in time, it comes in practice. Okay, now let's handle some objections. Okay, expect objections all the time with every call. We're good with our current broker, or hey, I am not interested at all, and I don't want to talk to you at all whatsoever. Most reps panic here, or they push too hard. They get in desperation mode, and they're like, no matter what they say, I'm gonna get something out of them. Instead, embrace the objection and turn it into a conversation. So if they say, hey, you know what? We already have a provider, sorry. Reply with something like, hey, you know what? I figured you might, but it sounds like things are going pretty well for you. Out of curiosity, is there one thing that you could possibly improve? You think you might be able to improve in your shipping process? And if so, like, what would you say that would be? Something along those lines. You can word it however you'd like. And this way you're not fighting them, you're joining them. So it's the way that you say it, okay? Maybe they'll say, you know what, nothing, we're fine. End of call, no problem, okay? But often you'll get a real concern. Like, well, you know what, actually tracking shipments is kind of a pain. That's your opening to propose a possible solution. And if they really brush you off, like, hey, no worries. Thank them for their time and move on politely, all right? Never burn the bridge. I've had prospects call me back months later because I actually left a good impression by being respectful. My very first shipper I ever talked to, I ended up moving a lot of freight for her. It was great. We had a good time. They ended up replacing the driver. They ended up getting a driver in-house. Hadn't talked to her for months. She called me out of the blue offering me a job recently. So, like, and I did follow up with her maybe like once a month just to like say hey. And she remembered that I was actually just trying to be a good guy and just making sure that she knew I was still alive. And by doing that, I separated myself from all of the rest, and I got actually offered a job at her place. I didn't take it, obviously, but that's what happens. Also, like, always define the next step. So if the call is going really well and they're engaged, don't just end with a friendly like all right, bye, see you later. We need to seal the next step, and this could be setting up a follow-up call, or otherwise known as a discovery call, which is very important. No one teaches that. I haven't heard any other YouTuber, article, anyone talk about discovery calls. They're so important. Or even like getting any kind of permission to send them a quote or some information via email. Like, for example, hey, you know what? It sounds like we actually might be a pretty good fit to help you out with some of those Texas shipments. How about we schedule a 30-minute call a little bit later this week just to dive deeper and see if there's more of a potential match, and just so I can learn a little bit more about your supply chain and just understand your role, like what your part is in all of this, who you report to. That call gets very technical very quick. It's something I love to talk about in my course. Make it specific and easy for them to say yes, okay? If they agree, great. Put it on the calendar, like right then if possible. And if they say, hey, you know what, like, just send me some info. Say, hey, sure, I'll email you some details, and if it looks interesting, we can chat more next week. And that way, like, it's not an open-ended like black hole, okay? So you then have a reason to follow up with them, okay? Not follow up with them every day, but actually follow through with what you said and call them next week, okay? They're always going to be around there unless they get fired or not there anymore, but like they'll always be there. So why be that gnat checking in when you can actually just follow through with 7 days from then and just see if there was any questions that they had. After each call, or at least like each day, jot down what worked for you, okay? Like what objections you heard and how you handled them, okay? Over time, you'll notice patterns. Certain lines that spark interest, lines that you say that spark interest, or common concerns that you can preempt. So those 23,000 calls that I made effectively became my personal lab for what works and what doesn't. What I'm teaching you right now, that's like just scratching the surface for how technical these calls can get. And you can only get to this point that I'm at right now until you actually just start dialing every single day and stay consistent with that. So just consistently be tweaking your script. It's more like guidelines. You're not reading off of it, but you're basing your experience off of real world feedback from your prospects all the time. And this continuous improvement mindset will make you a cold calling machine over time. Trust me, it's gonna happen. Okay. Remember that friend Daniel that I told you about? That like very nervous broker who absolutely hated cold calling, who could be in the same boat as you right now. He put these strategies to work. On his very next week of calls, he landed a meeting with a large manufacturing company in the Fortune 500. A few weeks later, that prospect became his first big client. He had a couple other ones, but he had a one big client. That one client gave Daniel 10 shipments per week on average with a 20% profit margin per shipment. Do the math. Fast forward 6 months, Daniel had several steady ship clients and a growing reputation and is thriving still today. So he went from struggling to get shippers to call him back to running a brokerage that was moving loads for some of the very companies that used to hang up on him. Like he called them back and is now doing business with them. So in other words, like he blew up his business in the best possible way by applying the stuff that we just talked about. It gets a lot more granular than that, but this is a really good baseline to work off of. And if you want to blow up in the same way Daniel did and like the idea of creating a freight brokerage no one else can compete with, then watch this next video and I'll show you how to create a freight brokerage that generated me millions. Okay. I'll see you on the next one.
All right.